Welcome to the Melinda Eitzen Show. I'm Melinda. We are so lucky today because we have Bert and Laura Starr, father-daughter estate planning team, here to talk with us about estate planning. Welcome, Bert and Laura.
Thank you,
Hey,
Melinda.
hi, Melinda.
Thank you.
I'm
Nice to
so
be
glad
here.
you're here.
Yeah.
So you have fun that you have a family firm,
Yes.
and not only father-daughter, but also husband, true?
Yes, true. Yes. Michael Prospetero.
Yeah, her husband, my son-in-law.
That's
Make that straight,
wonderful.
right?
That's so wonderful. So marriages are going to end either by divorce or death, true?
True.
And as you
Unfortunately.
know, I handle the divorce side, and you all handle the death side.
Yes.
So we know, because we're lawyers, what estate planning means, but the average person doesn't really know what that means. What does it mean to you all, estate planning?
Well, we like to sit down with the clients and go over a lot of life planning with them. How are they going to take care of themselves? How are they going to take care of their kids? What do they want to do in life? Taxes always come in there too, and asset protection planning. So we're cover those three facets with the client on the onset, and we talk about what their goals are. And now these things are not static documents too, and that's one thing people have to understand. So they evolve over the person's lifetime and careers, and as the kids grow up or things are happening, or even in a divorce situation, what happens, you know? So those are the primary areas that we'd like to look at when we sit down with a client to go through their estate plan.
And then they're doing what? They're ending up with a will and maybe other documents.
Typically, they end up with a will. That's the most standard estate planning document we generate. Powers of attorneys, which help you during life, both medical and financial, and trust. We utilize trust, and like ice cream, there's 31 different flavors of trust out there in the world. So it's kind of what one fits your life situation.
In my divorce practice, somebody will come in and say, I have a trust, blah, blah, blah. And they'll say, that means what for the divorce? And I always say, I need to read it. I don't know until I read it, because I have learned that what you say is true. There's so many different ones. There's living trusts, there's revocable trusts, there's irrevocable trusts, and they all have a different purpose.
Yeah, and my trust is different than your trust, which is different than Bert's trust. They're all very unique to your life circumstances. Yeah.
So does everyone need a will?
Yes. If you are over 18 and live in Texas and have even something as small as a bank account, you need a will.
And why? Why do they need one?
It helps protect your family and you going forward. If something were to happen to you, how do they take care of your assets, your bank account, your creditors? How do we deal with that? It allows us to open the door through probate court to get access and authority to do that. More importantly, though, everyone not just needs a will, they need those powers of attorney to help them during their life. We do a lot with the college kids going off to college. You're 18 now, your parents no longer are able to act for you or help you. If something happens when you're on spring break or away at school, it's really important that we have those documents in place so that your parents can step in and really help you out like they have the last 18 years, just in the legal realm.
So what does a power of attorney do?
It authorizes the parents in the situation Laura was just talking about gain access to medical information for also treat medical treatment, what kind of medical treatment. And then also on the financial side, authorizes that person to assist you with the finances, whether it's writing a check if you're an elderly, a convenience signer, so to speak, and also allows a person access to the funds to spend them to take care of you. But all of these things come with certain shortcomings. Wills are a letter to the court indicating who gets what, when, where, how, why. But actually the primary reason for probate is to get creditors paid and not to distribute the assets. And so it also is an invitation to creditors and other people who don't want to accept what's in the will to contest the will. And same thing with power of attorneys. Nobody has to accept a power of attorney. They may. That gives the person the authority. Now, in the medical community, they're more adept at at accepting those power of attorneys because they want to be able to treat the patient at that point in time. But on the financial area, the financial power of attorneys are a little more difficult because banks and brokers have been taken advantage of by these fraudulent type of power of attorneys. So there's more rules to cover, but there are protections and there's certain language to put in these documents. So we encourage people to meet with a lawyer and not just do it off the internet. It's kind of like, don't confuse your Google search with my law degree, and over 43 years of practice now. So we've seen a lot through the years.
Oh, it's more expensive to fix it than to just do it right the first time, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not that expensive. I mean, I'm shocked that people don't take the time and a little bit of money to do the planning they need, because on the other side, if somebody dies without a will, without any planning, it's much more expensive to tend to. Is that true?
It's much more expensive, and more often than not, what you wanted to happen, what you intended to happen, doesn't happen, because what we have is Texas and the code they've written a will for you, and they say how things go, and that's not usually what people intended or wanted.
Okay, so let's do an example. Let's say that somebody wants their money to go to their kids anyway, and they do have some wealth, and not a lot, but they have a house and maybe a retirement account, and they say, well, why do I need a will? I want all that to go to my kids. And isn't that what would happen?
Well, have they remarried? Is it a blended family? Are all the kids, are they stepkids? Are they biological children? Are they adopted? There's a whole list of what can happen. What happens if your child doesn't survive you? There's different. Sometimes they want it to go to the grandkids. Sometimes it goes to the other children.
It's a little more complicated.
Yeah, that's where when you're doing the do-it-yourself DIY forms online, or you're using, LegalZoom or one of those online
softwares.
Yeah, sorry. Online software programs. You're just filling in a blank with information that you maybe don't fully understand the consequences of what you're putting in there, or the different options, or even what the terms mean. It's a little more complicated.
Are there levels of wealth where you would start talking about a trust? Like, people don't need a trust unless they have $1 million or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think so. Actually, if somebody came in and they were single, I would say you need a trust. If you don't get a trust, I don't care how much money you have, I'm going to have you sign this piece of paper that says, I told you to get a trust and you didn't do it.
Wow.
Because a married couple versus a single person doesn't have this spouse that can readily assist them with a lot of issues with medical care and finances and what have you. So this person has to rely on others, maybe unrelated parties. And what happens, if they have a trust, I don't have to post bonds in the guardianship proceeding. They can also have a friend there who's going to be a co-trustee or a successor trustee for them. And they don't have the right to take the money and spend it on themselves. They're a fiduciary. And then two, if that friend or whomever they have acting as their successor trustee gets in an auto accident, has a credit card issue, has some liability, those creditors can't come back and sue and grab the money out of the trust. So some people are a little bit short-sighted in thinking that, I'm getting older, maybe I'll add junior onto my bank account.
Right.
When we represent banks and going after people's estates, we do that as well. We will go after mom and dad's account to collect that money from junior, because they are a co-signer on their bank account, and that makes them a co-owner. All right, so you
have to be thoughtful about that.
Yeah, there are certain signature cards that you have to fill out, but the bank is supposed to educate you on those, but they don't have the resources to teach everybody about what the proper signature card is. So if you have a trust, you pre-probated your estate, you're taking care of all your finances, and it's done. For you do-it-yourselfers out there, they should get a trust. They probated their own estate by doing that.
What's the definition of probate?
without going into all of the legalese of that, but basically it's to get creditors paid. Primary purpose of a probate is to get the creditor paid. Who's the biggest creditor out there? The IRS, you know? So you do have to take care of all of those situations. And then you marshal the assets of the estate, and then you can distribute those out to the beneficiaries. But it's a time-consuming process. It's a public process. It requires you to file the inventory in the court. I can look at Melinda's all their assets if you go through probate and see what you had and what you own. And you know, with today's issues with identity theft and all the other issues that are going on, who wants to do that? You know.
So you can avoid probate by planning. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
That's the key
Yes.
message.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can avoid probate on a lot of internal family conflict. A lot of times if you avoid probate, you calm down any conflict that happens with the families.
Oh, that's smart. So Laura, Bert said something about contesting the will, and you see that in movies all the time. I'm going to contest the will. Is that real? Is that a thing?
It is. It's not quite like in the movies. For example, there's no formal reading of the will. We get that a lot.
That's right.
It's not. That's not as dramatic. We would sit there and the gasp of who gets what. But you can contest a will if you think it was done by fraud or undue influence. There's a list of reasons.
It's not because you just don't like it.
Some people do that. Yes, that happens. Unfortunately, it is difficult. It becomes a very long, tedious process. It's hard to prove. A lot of wills will have a clause in there. If you do contest it, you lose your inheritance if you lose. So it's hard to do, and you have to really consider it.
Yeah, because we want people to have a right to put in their will whatever they want to put in their will.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And not have it easily contested.
Yes.
Unfortunately, money is thicker than blood in a lot of families.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those families we thought were, the ideal Leave It to Beaver, Donna Reed, old time, 60s
Yes.
sitcoms, family life, it just, something happened,
Mm-hmm.
And so as a result, they'll just on emotion file claims in the court and or contest it or do something that isn't right. So again, avoiding the probate process through a trust is the way to do it. And a lot of people who have to go through that probate process, actually wish they had, the family had gone ahead and done a trust. So
I think one reason people don't do the planning, it's not that it costs them money. Maybe that's not the issue. They don't want to think about death.
True.
Yeah, it's hard, and facing one's mortality is difficult. I always like to think of or approach it that you're not thinking of planning your death or your mortality. You're helping your family. It's a gift to your family to allow them to focus on their grief and the family in that moment, and not how do we get into bank accounts? How do we settle this? This creditor's calling us. It really will streamline it for them. It's a good gift to give your family for peace of mind.
That's a good way to put it. It's a responsibility, and it is a gift to the family. Usually it's some kind of trauma in the family. Somebody else died or got sick that motivates these people to finally say, okay, we're grown-ups. We have to take care of this.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
You mentioned taxes, Bert. I know that there's nothing avoidable, right, when it comes to death and taxes.
that's right. Yeah.
And there's some type of tax we pay when money goes from one person to the other in certain circumstances. Is part of the planning to try to have the best tax effect as possible, pay the least amount of money to the government?
Yeah, there's even Supreme Court case says you can arrange your affairs to minimize your exposure to taxes. So the tax code is set up, one, to raise revenue for the government, but two, to legislate social change in America, whether it be, encouraging investments in some low-income housing project in a different city is one way they do that. So there are things inside the code and to go ahead that you can take advantage of if you do the planning up front. Now, these things do change. So when we draft documents, we have all these triggers inside the documents. If the law says this, then we can do this. If the law says that, you can do that. So we like building options in for the survivors to trigger those things going forward, because we don't know. You know, we're running at $1 trillion deficit. We know that they're going to have to change the tax laws again to raise some revenues. So we'll sit down and plan and outline the person's estate plan for years to come. You know?
So let's say somebody did step one. They did their planning. It sounds like maybe they should review it occasionally with you.
Yes.
So how often would you recommend that?
Well, major life events. You know, kids are now out of college or so, and empty nesters you are. Hey, if you win the lottery, definitely come to us. I've represented 5 lottery winners.
Oh,
and
wow.
So we set up.
We're lucky to come to.
Yeah, right. We'll give you numbers later. And then we set up a lottery trust. Is how it used to be, able to grab those things. Now it's gone through family trust, and then on to family limited partnerships. If you look at the list of winners and how, when they receive a proper counsel, you can see on the list of winners of lotteries how they have grabbed that money, and the process goes through.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it's been fun working with them.
I bet. I bet. That is so unusual. So one of the major life events would be divorce.
Yes.
Right. So let's say that I have a will, it leaves everything to my husband and I divorce. Now what?
Well, upon filing for the divorce and the divorce decree being entered, your husband would no longer be included. We would determine he was predeceased or not available. That's in the law to handle things like that in case you forget to update your will after a divorce. So the spouse and any blood relation to the spouse that's not also blood relation to you is excluded.
So there's no advantage to killing your ex.
That's right.
Even if
Please
you're
don't do
still
that.
in the will.
Don't
You're
do
not.
that. That won't help you receive any assets. No, don't do that. Yeah, so.
But it would still be a time where I should come do a review of my planning.
Yes, definitely. Come do review your planning. We can set up trust that both spouses can contribute to help the kids if they're minor children, especially. That kind of takes out the tension in the relationship, and kind of works towards a common goal of keeping the kids safe and secure.
Do you counsel people on how they are stating their beneficiaries? Like when you have a 401k, you list with the 401k company who your beneficiary would be. Do you counsel people as part of the planning on how to write all of that up?
We do talk to them about that. We work as a team with their financial planner, maybe their tax return preparer, and us. So we want to blend all of these things, because the beneficiary designation on those retirement plans are outside the whole estate plan will probate process. And so we don't want that to cause a blip in what we're drafting in our documents. So it's a coordinated plan. You mentioned something else earlier about what are some of the life-changing events.
Yes.
And so those are also going to be maybe when your children have special needs. And, especially during a divorce situation in which you want to make sure you don't upset the government apple cart there, because as a child gets older and becomes emancipated at age 18, well, we want to make sure that he doesn't lose those benefits. Now, yes, the child could be covered under the parent's insurance plan to 26, but again, you got to do planning way before, because there's these look-back periods and qualification for Medicaid. And so how do you set up the insurance so that the money doesn't go right to that child and disqualify him or her from all of these other type of benefits? We use trusts, irrevocable life insurance trusts. What about continuing child support at that time when they're over 18? It'll be continued support. How do we funnel that money to make sure that the child is taken care of? Or maybe it's just a physical limitation that they can use an ABLE account, or combined with maybe a 529 plan. So we kind of walk them through all of these steps, basically. And again, what compounds it is not only just the child's health situation, but then you layer a family law dispute or dissolution of the marriage on top of that, and we just compounded these problems, and it takes a while to sort it out.
Yeah, so as a divorce lawyer, I need to be conscious, and all divorce lawyers need to, and people getting divorced, if there's a special needs child, I need to be talking to the estate planning lawyers.
Absolutely.
Because we don't want to think, oh, we're doing great. We're getting child support for the life of the child beyond 18.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I'm messing up the benefits that child could have received because we didn't do it right. So these are complex issues,
Yes.
not to be pulled off of the internet.
Right. Yeah, and you can get all those benefits. It's just how you do it, you
Yes.
know, basically. And you have to kind of wind through the code here, both codes, you know, all of the government type codes, basically. And there's a way to do it, and but you just have to do it right. And it's not a daunting task, basically,
Yes.
to operate and maintain during the child's lifetime.
Another life event would be remarriage.
Yes.
So assuming they would want to name their spouse in their
Absolutely.
in their estate planning documents, that would be a time to look at all of their estate planning again and figure out, okay, I have grown children, but I'm getting remarried. How do I plan for all of that? If I want my
Yes.
spouse to be in that plan.
Be in that plan, yeah.
In the blended family situation, we see quite a few. It's probably half of the clients that come through now are in a blended family situation, you know, with his kids, her kids, and our kids. And so, yeah, there are ways that you can devise all the estate plan to take care of the surviving spouse, and then basically, depending on what the agreement is among the two spouses, you know, how the division of the estate will transpire. And again, using a trust takes the emotion out of the situation, basically, and settling the estate not only for the wife but the husband and all the blended family children.
Yes, because I think it's such a emotional time when somebody passes. If you've already done the planning, you're going to have less to do at the time of death than if there's been no planning, and then it's very stressful.
Exactly.
We also sometimes work with estate planning lawyers when people are doing prenups or postnups, because they're putting in the prenup or the postnup what happens at death.
Exactly.
And we don't want to mess up the planning.
Right.
So we'll be like, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. What do you think? So there's a little coordination that goes on in other areas of law that touches the estate plan going forward.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's also basically, what about if they end up getting divorced for the second time? You know, how to arrange that, basically, and then how the division of the estate will happen at that point, if at all, and then the tax consequences of that, and then going forward upon the death or disability of one of the spouses, we want to actually sit down and make sure that we can use the other spouse's unused credit exemptions. Now, I'm getting out there in some tax language, but we want to preserve that because we've had situations where other family members of the deceased spouse didn't want to take the credits, basically, and shift them over to the surviving spouse. So we want to make sure that we preserve that, because we can double the estate tax exemption, and then upon the death of the second person, there are no estate taxes owed.
So when you talk about credits, are you talking about we can gift a certain amount of money?
Well, there's exemptions and there are credits.
Okay.
and basically what we're after are preserving the credits. The exemptions would be if I leave everything to my spouse, we have a marital deduction, and so what we're also after are the unused credits in an estate, which is right now $12,920,000, going down to about half of that in 2026. So you see, it's a bouncing number.
Yes.
But if we cover it basically so that in the prenup situation, that the deceased spouse's executors and whoever's filling out their return will take those credits and apply them back to the surviving spouse like they're supposed to, then we have two estates that can pass tax-free.
So you mentioned that number changes over
Yes.
time. And this is why people need somebody knowledgeable, right?
Right.
It's the law. Every time the legislature meets, they can change the law. Sometimes they already have a change built into the law, right?
Exactly.
And you need somebody like yourselves who knows what's going on.
Keeping up. Yeah.
Yes, who is keeping
so
up.
you don't have to.
That's a great way to put it. Please be keeping up. I just got back from Advanced Family Law Conference, where it occurs every August. And since this was a legislative year, we learned about what were the changes in the law. And every 2 years, they're doing something different for us. And sometimes it's on kid issues, and sometimes it's on money issues. But we also know the Internal Revenue Code, which affects both of us in our areas of practice, that changes, and it's a very complex code to begin with.
Yeah, I like to brag to my colleagues around the United States that at least in Texas, we get a chance to learn the law, 'cause it's every 2 years, whereas the Internal Revenue Code is constantly changing. And
Yes.
so yeah, it's quite a challenge to kind of stay up on all these different areas.
And that's why we go to school, and we're required to do a certain amount of learning.
Right.
Yeah.
So when people come to see you, you would tell them all these different documents they have the options of, right? A will, a trust, powers of attorney, that could be for medical or financial, helping someone. And then are there any other documents that you provide them or counsel you give them on, hey, talk to your family members about some of this in advance?
Yes, we always recommend keeping lines of communication. Tell your family what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you expect them to act, and tell them, I would suggest tell all the kids at the same time in the same room, so everybody hears the same thing from your mouth, and they can air their grievances or concerns then, and it can be discussed as a family. So when push comes to shove and we're having to deal with these issues, everyone heard mom say the exact same thing, and it's not a he said, she said situation. They heard it from mom. They know the plan. They know who to call. They know the team. They know what mom expected them to do.
And are there certain documents that you say, give a copy to this person, give a copy to that person?
Yeah, we recommend you make a copy of all the documents and give it to the person that you named first and foremost, so that they have it. You can keep a digital copy. We have to have originals for most things, but if you have a copy, it gives us a starting point.
What you said about telling everybody at the same time. My mom must have gotten that advice because she invited my sister and brother and I to dinner, and she was like, when I die, you're each getting a third no matter what. Like, we're not looking backwards and saying, oh, you paid for this for her or him or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
It's even. Like, even if it's not even, that's what I want. And I thought that was helpful. Like, we're not the type that would have a big feud anyway, but there won't be, well, wait a minute. Mom paid for law school for you. I should get a
Exactly.
credit for that.
Right.
She's like, I paid for whatever I wanted to pay for.
Yes.
And whatever's left, it's a third, a third, a third.
She's a smart woman.
I know.
Smart
Yeah,
woman.
fair is not equal, all the time. Yeah, so
Right.
every family deals with that differently, and so it's whatever they want to do. We can put it down there. And in your situation, did you have all three of you were serving as executors, or?
I'm the lawyer, so unfortunately,
Really?
I'm the executor.
Yeah. And again, families can do that. They can appoint somebody to serve as solo, depending on the dynamics of the children. A lot of times we'll say everybody's going to be co. Now, they don't have to serve. They can decline to serve, because sometimes, again, we're trying to take the emotion out of it.
That's great.
If they're involved in it, they see it is hard
It's
work.
not a prize.
No, yeah, right. It's hard work.
You
It's
would
hard
rather
work.
not
It's a job.
be.
That's
Yeah.
really hard work to do that. So the issue is, well, okay, so let's give them a taste of it, And then they say,
Yes.
okay, I'm going to resign. It's okay to resign, Or it's okay to decline too. So.
And that's why we really get to know our clients. We want that personal relationship. We talk about the family dynamics. We talk about what's going on. What are the goals? What do we want to see happen with everything? And that's where we kind of put the puzzle pieces together to make it work for everybody. And
Do you ever end up servicing more than one generation of a family?
quite frequently, yes.
That makes sense, because you did the planning for the first, and now you're helping them maybe with what do we do? Dad did die. What do we do now?
Yes, yeah.
And then they need to do their planning.
Yes, and we're familiar with the family dynamics and the whole plan, especially if there's a family business involved. We do a lot of that, and it's really important to keep
Right.
that.
Yeah, Melinda,
together.
estate planning is generational planning. So we would like to meet with grandma and grandpa too and plan, because what they can do for their children, who are the adults now, and to the grandchildren, it again, the estate planning does work better with multi-generational planning, because then we can set up all these types of nice trusts, and plans, and sometimes it involves family partnerships, and also, especially if they're entrepreneurs with privately held businesses, then we can make sure that the continuity of the business continues. And so that's why we bring in Mike back at the office to talk about, ESOPs or, supplemental executive bonus plans, or what about stock options? What kind of classes of stock, and how do you do this? And so actually then we're working with their ownership of the business as well as their investment assets.
Oh, that's great. We also in our practice deal with a lot of people who own a business. And, one of the privileges of owning a business is hiring your family members. So
Yeah, right.
it's often a bunch of family members are working
Yes.
in the business in some way. So that is super important to people who have, put their lifeblood into this business. They want it to continue. They want it to benefit the multi-generation.
Yeah.
So I can really see that being an important part of your planning. So with the multi-generation, sometimes I see trusts that are generation skipping. That it skips one generation, goes to the grandchildren.
Yes.
Is that for a tax reason? Why do people do that?
Yeah, a lot of times it is to avoid the generation skip tax, brought about in 1986, because at the point in time, people were having these trusts, like the Rockefellers and the Kennedys and DuPonts, and they would set up these trusts that would last multiple generations, and so it would never come back out to get taxed in these type of trusts. So in 1986, they instituted the generation skip tax, which says if you skip over a generation, so if I leave my assets instead of to Laura, to her daughter, and skip a generation, you can do that up to a certain dollar amount, but anything over that, you're going to end up paying a confiscatory type tax. So you
I
avoid
see.
that. So say it's a GST type trust, means that you have planned to take advantage of the exemption in the generation skip tax.
I see.
And so that's how you're trying to plan to pass assets skipping over one
It's not
generation.
because they don't like their daughter.
No, right. Yeah. They can do that too. They can do that too.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So there's ways around that, but again, if you want to talk about all this tax planning, I can go on. Right.
So this doesn't have to be a sad meeting with the lawyers. If somebody comes to meet with you, it doesn't have to be morbid. It really is practical. And
practical.
it's how do we keep as much wealth within our family, give the least amount to the government. It seems like everybody would be on the same page with that concept, right? And actually have happen what you want to happen. And some people have a strong feeling about charitable giving. And they want that to be part of it. And they don't want their kids to be like not honoring their charitable giving desires. So that could be a piece, true?
Yes, we do quite a bit of charitable planning and help the charities around. And we work with a few of the charities, local charities, about how best to get the money to them and for their needs so that we can properly advise our clients when they're doing that.
Yeah, whether it be a church, whether it be the alma mater, or whether it be one of these other medical related charities for health, heart, cancer, whatever, or even we lately had quite a few that have donated to take care of animals.
I love that.
Yes.
I love
those
my
are my
dogs.
favorite. Those are my favorite.
Exactly. Everybody loves their pet, and they want to make sure they're taken care of. And then, well, there has to be an institution there to take care of them or provide the support for others to take care of them. So there's, again, trust, charitable lead trust, charitable remainder trust, charitable remainder uni trust, all these other different flavors of doing that. There's donor advised funds you can contribute to. How's the best way to do that? Do you give them cash, or you give them stock? Do you give them parts of your company?
Do you earmark it?
Yes.
Where they have to use it in a certain way, or do you just give it to
Right.
their general fund?
Yeah, you want it just used in North Texas? You want it used in some other locale? So basically, you can do a lot of that type of planning.
There's considerations for all things.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. What you want to happen, we can make happen. It's just how we do
And
it.
there's some income tax benefits to doing
Yes.
that, and estate tax benefits to doing that if you're interested in the type of deductions that they afford to your estate.
And that's something they should also tell their kids, right? In
Yes.
that meeting is, I am leaving, especially if it's religious. Like, it's hard not to be on board for the animals or the heart hospital,
Yeah.
but they might not agree on religion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the person who's doing the planning may feel strongly about, I want to leave X amount to the blah, blah church, and the kids may not value that. Well, they need to be informed that's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that just goes back to that communication, open communication. What are you doing it? Why are you doing it? What do you want to happen? And who do you want to make sure it happens, and why?
Is there some counseling about just leave some of this to people or to institutions while you're alive? Like, do you talk through with them, depending on their level of wealth, how much should be gifted while you're living versus left at your death?
Yeah,
Yes.
especially
Yeah,
right now
right,
with
yeah.
the high exemption amount of 12,920 and growing, it gives us a lot of room to play with some gifting right now and taking advantage of those high values.
Well, yeah, not only gifting for charities, but gifting among other family
Yeah.
members.
Yeah.
And so take advantage of it. So, and disperse the wealth now with the lower taxes.
My mother says, it's fun sometimes to give it while you're living and then get to see them enjoy
Yes.
it.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I guess if they spend it in a way you didn't approve of, that could go the other way.
Yeah.
But I know that that's a planning piece, is be smart about when you're giving it. I mean, you need to have enough to take care of yourself, right? So people need to keep enough to take care of the rest of their lives. And now people are living so long.
They're living longer. Right now, our you can gift up to $17,000 per year per donee right now. So we have a lot of grandparents that like to give that $17,000 to
Yes.
each grandchild and see them enjoy it. And it's
Yes.
nice to take advantage of the higher amounts, and while also kind of spending down your estate and keeping something to live on.
Yes, yes.
nice.
So where physically in the Metroplex are you located?
We are in Plano, North Plano, at Parker and Midway, right
And
next to the
what's the name of your firm?
Starr Law Firm.
That's a great name.
Thank
Right. Who wouldn't want a star for their lawyer?
Right,
There you
right.
go.
We'll put on the screen how to contact you.
Okay.
And I can speak from experience that these are excellent lawyers who know what they're doing. So you would not go wrong contacting the Starr firm, but contact them or someone, because you really should do some planning. Thank you
Agreed.
so much for
Thank
being
you, Melinda.
here.
This was a great experience.
Oh,
Wonderful.
Thank you very much, Melinda.
Pleasure. You're
It's been a pleasure.
welcome.
A lot of fun.
Okay, now our tip for the day. Estate planning is important. You don't want to leave your children or other family members in a bind when you pass. And before you pass, you may become incapacitated and need somebody to help handle your affairs. So don't just blindfold yourself to the fact that you're going to die. We're all going to die sometime. And do a favor for those who would be left behind so they're not put in a difficult situation. And that this can also help you financially. Spend a little bit planning, and it could really save a lot for your family members in the future. So my tip is take care of business, do your estate planning.